Hello, and welcome to the second read-along live stream broadcast. If you don't know what this is, I have written a book called The Funny Thing About Forgiveness, What Every Leader Needs to Know About Improv, Culture, and the World's Least Favorite F Word. And for the folks who are reading my book, I have invited them to submit questions about a different chapter each week. And just let me know what they're thinking. Let me know what's resonating or what questions they have. And then I have committed to being live here on Facebook and on LinkedIn once a week, responding to questions about the book. So I will just get right down to it. I would love if you would be willing to just let me know that you're here and let me know that you're watching and leave a comment. Just say hello. I would love that. And if you have a question that maybe you didn't submit, I had asked for everything to be submitted by 11 a.m. today. But if, as you're listening, something really resonates with you or a new question pops up, feel free to post it. And I can't always see who is asking because of permissions with StreamYard, but I can see your comment and your question come in, and I'll be happy to respond to that as well. Don't ask me a really, really hard one because I might need to think about it first. But if it's just a middle of the road type of question, go ahead and feel free to leave that. I'm mostly joking. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with questions. I like this quote, "Proving is not an authentic or helpful motivation for action. But is there ever a time when proving someone wrong who doubted you or proving to yourself that you can do something is helpful motivation?" So I understand that a whole lot. And there's, I think, a lot in our culture that really celebrates this idea of, proving the haters wrong or proving to yourself, that you can do something. And, I think it's easy to just celebrate motivation at all and feel like, the most important thing is to just get out there and be productive and chase your dreams and whatever. But ultimately, the only reason for any of it, the only reason to chase your dreams, the only reason to do anything is because you believe that it will bring you joy. But the reality is that don't you want joy in your life more than just the day you get the trophy or the day you get the check or the day you get the job or whatever? Like, I think that the reason it's important to not be motivated by proving the haters wrong or proving something to yourself is that when you do that, it feels like every creative endeavor, you just kind of have this chokehold on it, because you need it to become something in order for you to be worthy, in order for you to be lovable, in order for you to be proud of yourself. And I know for me that I have felt that way. I absolutely have felt that way. So the beauty of, surrendering that proving energy and surrendering that need to prove in order to be motivated to do something is that then you can just start from a place of worthiness. You can just start from a place of knowing that you are lovable and knowing that how things already are right now in this moment is good enough for you to be worthy of love and joy and peace and all of that good stuff. That way, your journey of becoming can be joyful. Your journey of growing and getting wherever you want to be, you can have joy throughout that whole process. So that's the reason why, if the question is, can those things be motivational? Of course they can. But in my experience, I have felt robbed of a whole lot of joy and inner peace in my life, starting from a place of proving. Okay. In the homicidal chicken example, this is not going to make sense if you have not been reading the book. You say that the audience may laugh if you sell out your scene partner by denying the reality they've offered in favor of a reality that reflects reality. That will all make sense when you have read chapter 2. You say that it may feel rewarding, but the goal of improv is to honor your scene partner, not to make the audience laugh. Can you say more about this? It seems to a non-improviser that making the audience laugh would always be a good thing in a comedy venue. Would the rules of improv say it's better to follow a dead-end suggestion rather than redirect the scene to something funnier? That makes a lot of sense. So the rules of improv, like this idea of improv, is that it is safe to trust those moments when you're not sure what's going to happen next, and when you feel like you might have lost your audience, and when you feel really vulnerable. It's safe to trust those moments and to follow that and to just be in that moment without trying to save it. And so the rules of improv are not, who cares about the audience? They a little bit are, but the rules of improv are trust those moments. And there is something to be said for letting the audience feel that struggle with you and letting them see, the reality that this really is all made up. And, we really don't know what's going to happen next. So I think the ultimate point I'm making in that section is that you can trade that little laugh of just selling out your scene partner and being like, are you okay? It seems like, you're delusional and think that chickens can commit homicide or wield a weapon. It's one thing to like sort of sell your scene partner out and be like, oh, that was just a dream, or, oh, this person is crazy, or something like that. But if instead you follow your scene partner's instincts there and you go with them there and you let the audience feel that little bit of like, I don't know where this is going, the payoff of letting them struggle with you for a little bit and sitting in that quiet for a little bit, and getting to something that absolutely nobody had control over. And it only exists because you worked together. That is how you surprise and delight your audience. And so in having your scene partner's best interests at heart, first and foremost, you ultimately do give the audience what they came to see. You ultimately do serve your audience by serving each other, And so what I go on to say in that chapter is that this is so applicable when you think about, real life relationships, especially at work, and this idea of ultimately what you need as a leader is to, provide great customer service and provide a great, place to work. And it's, hopefully triple bottom line, like you care about people as well as profit, but like, can you trust that holding your people's best interests first can ultimately get you to those revenue goals, can ultimately get you to those measures of success that are more quantifiable? Can you trust that guarding your scene partner first and foremost, honoring your scene partners first and foremost, that maybe there will be a little bit of tension, maybe there will be a little bit of contrast for a little bit, but can you trust that ultimately there will be this bigger payoff that is so much more delightful and so much more fulfilling than it ever could have been had the audience just watched one person kind of safely strong arm the scene to like the most comfortable places that it could go, So ultimately, yeah, I know it sounds like really surprising, but that is absolutely what I was taught and what, that this is discussed in Truth and Comedy, which is a book written by Del Close and Sharna Halpern. People have trained lots and lots of improvisers. And absolutely, the idea is you're here for your scene partner. You're here to make your scene partner look good. That is your number one job. It's not your job to stand out. It's not your job to protect the audience. It's your job to have your scene partners back. That is your first and foremost job. And everything else will happen in its own right time. So I guess yes is the answer to that question in short. Okay, next. I love the I've got your back ritual. Me too. What a great thing to implement in life. Is this a fairly universal part of improv culture? Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I haven't performed at every improv theater, but everyone that I've performed at does that ritual before every show. And there is a movie that came out. I think it's called Don't Think Twice. And I think it's on Netflix, but I might be wrong about that. But it's all about improv in New York City. And they do that ritual in that movie too. So as far as I know, this is absolutely a ritual that happens like everywhere with improv. And I love it too. And, I also just want to like underscore here this concept of rituals, because that is something that I really hoped to underscore in this chapter, is that there is something really important about rituals as long as they are connected to that why. And I think the only time that rituals lose their meaning and value is when they've become disconnected with the why. And so, in improv culture, we have this ideology that's like the reason that we make eye contact and touch each other on the shoulder and say, I've got your back before every show. The ideology behind that is firmly baked in. We're taught that in class, where it's like, everything that I just said in the previous answer, that we're here for each other. We're not here to get discovered. We're not here to stand out to the audience as the brightest shining star. We're here for each other. We're here to listen. We're here to be vulnerable. We're here to get in the weirdness with each other and support each other through the weirdness, and the hard stuff. That's why we're here. But right before you walk out on stage, when we're back in the green room and maybe we know who's in the audience, that raises that tension. And it's really easy to start getting in your head and getting into proving energy, like we already talked about, and start making some of those awkward, self-preservationist kind of decisions in your scene work that are truly there to just protect you from feeling uncomfortable and just protect you from feeling vulnerable, So because we know that when tensions are high and you start to get nervous, that's when you are most likely to slip into proving energy. That is how good improvisers, kind, loving people slip into that proving energy and derail things. So since we know that, we make it a commitment every time, every single show. You look each other in the eye and we say, I've got your back. Because that reminds us, it grounds us back to this is why we're here. This is who we really are. And so, I think those kind of rituals are so important at work too. Before I do these broadcasts, my ritual, well, it feels vulnerable to say, but I already started the story. I have this little song that I wrote for myself that I sing before I come on every time to remind myself that what I ultimately want to be in this world is not more noise in your day, not one more person doing a live stream trying to sell you stuff, I don't want to be that. What I ultimately would love the most is to be an encouragement in your day, to be something that is helpful and loving, and that is pointing at something bigger, and that is maybe even just a mirror for you, for the wonderful stuff that you're already doing. That's what I really want. And so I try to remind myself every time I'm not here for to get distracted by how many viewers or get distracted by whatever. That's not why I'm here. I am here because in my heart of hearts, I'm hoping to point at something that is loving and beautiful and bigger than me. That has nothing to do with me other than me being one of many vessels for that. And so I think those kind of rituals are really important. And I really encourage you in your work, in your life, to think about what is a ritual that is tied to a deeper why that you can implement regularly to bring you back to who you really are. And I think that, that's like the most important service that a ritual has. You don't do it just because that's what we do in improv. We do it because it reminds us of who we really are. So just an aside about rituals and the significance of rituals. Okay, next question. The yes and humility/courage balance seems like a direct answer to a big barrier to the damned if you do, damned if you don't dilemma people reference to get out of dealing with important but uncomfortable issues at work. For example, like race, inclusion, sexism, etc. I've heard people share that they avoid those conversations because they are accused of being silent if they hang back and listen, and are accused of mansplaining if they speak up. Okay, I understand that a lot. And yes, absolutely. That is such a perfect, equation here with this yes and thinking and this humility, courage thinking. Because, one way that I like to think about it is like when you get into that damned if you do, damned if you do, damned if you don't thinking. It's basically like if you were to say plants are stupid. I hate house plants because what's the deal with them? You give them too much water and then they die. You don't give them any water and then they die. So what am I supposed to do? Water or not water? What am I supposed to do? We don't treat plants like that. We understand that sometimes plants need water and other times they need sunlight. Like they need not more water. We understand that there's a balance. And that's what this all comes back to, balance. And, I just can't do anything but underscore how much I appreciate that observation and absolutely agree with that, what I'm really hoping for this chapter is for it to encourage and maybe even equip leaders or people who just have a culture stake, at a workplace who are like, these conversations are awkward and it's easy to say the wrong thing, to just understand like, just maintain that balance. Notice when it's time to listen, notice when it's time to be brave and add something. And, I share in this chapter that the best way to know when is it time to listen and when is it time to add something, the best way to know that is to be in alignment. And that's something that we'll talk about in the next chapter. And I have a comment. Oh, thank you so much. Love the water analogy, Miss Wetherald. Well, thank you. I'm glad that you love it, Mr. Aiken. I love it too. I think that it's just, I understand that feeling of overwhelm, of being afraid that like I'm going to break it, I'm going to make it worse no matter what I do. But, it just is true that there's a lot of things in life that just require balance. So I'm glad that that resonated. Okay, last question, unless anyone who is watching would like to submit something that has come up for them as they've been reading or just as they've been listening. Last question. I'm curious about how you use motivational interviewing in your work. My understanding is that MI is a more clinical method for therapists or hospital settings. Do you work in these environments? Oh, okay. I don't work in those environments anymore. I used to. And so the reason why I became trained in motivational interviewing was because I was a social worker who I was not a therapist, but I was working on a study that really you could think about it like behavior change coaching, essentially. So it was like these little counseling sessions where we were just encouraging veterans who were trying to quit smoking. And of course, that came with a whole bunch of other things because we are all more than one thing about us. And so certainly, people would bring up other addictions and things of that nature. And it was a hospital-based setting. Excuse me, I should have brought water. I'm still a little bit on the up and up from after having COVID. But so I don't work in those environments anymore. But how I do use MI is a way that I'm not sure if it's really being used anywhere else. And I don't mean to, maybe someone listening to me like, I use this all the time in an HR setting. But what I ultimately take from it is this understanding in MI of coming alongside and of using curiosity to be like, why is it that you're behaving the way that you're behaving? Why is it that this is happening for you? So exploring with curiosity. And then if you remember in the chapter, I introduced this concept of elicit, provide, elicit, that this is how motivational interviewers encourage people to make a behavior change. And basically that means that you are eliciting from the person, what do you think? I'm sure you've probably made lots of attempts. And by the way, in my work, that happens a whole lot. I confront someone about the way that they speak to other people on the team or whatever the job is, whatever it is that I'm there to help communicate. And they're like, I know, my wife tells me that all the time. I've actually been going to counseling for it. Like most of the time when someone is in a safe enough environment to be vulnerable and say what's true, which they don't always feel safe enough to say that, say that very vulnerable thing in front of someone. It's not the case that this is shocking information for them or that they've just never been aware that, they affect people the way that they do. People are usually more self-aware than you think. And when they're in an environment where they are able to speak up about that or able to share, what's going on, they're like more ready than you realize to have these kind of conversations. So it's elicit. What have you already tried? What do you think might be helpful? And then you provide resources in accordance with what they have suggested. And then you elicit more like, and there are specific MI questions. I won't get all into this. Just like I said in the chapter, I had to stop myself from writing a whole book about motivational interviewing and mindful improv. There is so much overlap and it is such a powerful combination. And I have done that training. I actually had the incredible opportunity to do a training like that, motivational interviewing and mindful improv, for people whose job it is to help young men and women who are trying to leave gangs and who are trying to, turn their life around. And just what an incredible usage for motivational interviewing that is. Most of the time when I use MI, it is in a much more coaching related capacity, or I'm teaching HR staff or leaders the principles of motivational interviewing, or something called TTM, the Trans Theoretical Model, which was developed by Prochaska and DiClemente. And I do introduce that a little bit later in the book. And it explains the stages of change, which is so beautiful and so helpful. And helps you understand like what is happening in someone's brain and life when they are trying to execute a change. And, it shows you the stages that they go through of, pre-contemplation. I'm scared I'm going to get it wrong. Pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, relapse. I think I got them all. But what I love is that you just heard me say relapse. That is included in the stages of change. So it is understood by social scientists who work in the helping professions that when someone is trying to make a change, whether it be addiction or whether it be, a variety of things that they may be in a clinical setting being helped with, relapse is just a part of the process. It's not shocking. It's not surprising. And, oh man, I could preach on this. And I know that wasn't maybe like what the question was getting at, but it is so valuable to understand that in an HR setting, if you understand behavior change and you understand that relapse is a part of it, then we don't need to think of it when we've already confronted someone about the way they email and they do a good job for 2 weeks and then they send another zinger without thinking. And we get in our heads thinking, so I guess you just weren't listening. I guess this just isn't that important to you. I guess, how many times we're going to have this conversation? Instead of thinking, I need to re-engage this person right back where we were before, in the trans-theoretical model, we understand that relapse is an expected part of the change process. And so actually, I can re-engage them further along in the process than I think by asking, what have we learned? What led up to that relapse? What happened there? How can we put some protections in place to make sure that, you're able to carry out that maintenance for longer next time? And of course, to be clear, in an HR setting, you're not using those words. How can we extend your maintenance period longer? But let me kind of land the plane here. I think the answer to this question is that because I love the trans-theoretical model so much and I love motivational interviewing so much, I have found ways to teach that in a leadership and HR context so that we can think about accountability differently. That's the concise version of how I use it. I use it to teach accountability in a way where we can actually expect better results. I mean, we know that motivational interviewing is efficacious. We know that it is helpful in helping people, A, actually attempt to change, and B, successfully do that change. So why not broaden the context? Why not bring it to other places? And man, do I wish that there was like 1,000 people who were like experts at MI and we could like talk about, the details of how to do it in this other setting, because there are things that certainly are different. But I won't get all into that. I would love to, but I'm sure that that's not what you came here to see. So in conclusion, yes and, a totally different understanding for yes and. I love the resonance that I'm hearing, even people that didn't have questions, but that have just sent me text messages and emails telling me about like how they're using this at work and in their families, and just sharing about the way that this idea of humility and courage, goes hand in hand with servant leadership. I don't know how many of you are familiar with servant leadership or have read anything about it, but it's a powerful way to change company culture and to just feel more joy in your journey as a leader. And yes, and this yes and thinking really goes hand in hand with that. So I hope this has been meaningful. I will be back again next Friday at 12 p.m. Responding to questions or just thoughts, comments from chapter 3. So if you are doing the reading a chapter a week, this week is chapter 3, and please submit your questions either to my email, or you can leave direct messages for me on social media. Or you can, I have a form on my website, andbeyondimprov.com/funnythingaboutforgiveness. And I put a submissions form there where you can submit a question or a comment there as well. So I will be on the lookout for those. Just get them to me by 11 a.m. next Friday, and I will respond to them in the live stream. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you for reading the book. Thank you for the ones of you who are reaching out to me. I love that so much. It means so much to me. I poured so much time and love into this book. So hearing from you who are reading it just means so much to me. So thank you very much for letting me know what it means to you, letting me know how you're putting it into practice. I love all of that. And if you are watching the replay later, hello to you. Thank you for watching. Leave comments, even just on the replay. This will ultimately get posted on YouTube as well. So if you're watching it on YouTube later, thank you for being here and for watching to this point. If you are reading the book and you couldn't, submit your question in time for the live broadcast, but still leave your questions in the comments on the video, because I would love to get back to them. I would love to respond and just engage with you on what this experience is like of putting mindful improv thinking to practice in your everyday life of leading, confronting, forgiving, healing, growing, all of that beautiful stuff. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you next week. Bye.